Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the Chicago Botanic Garden and our third annual Inspiring Nature Play Conference. I'm Eileen Prendergast. I am Director of Education here. And I'm going to share a little bit about some logistic information for the day, but I also really want to take this opportunity to thank all of you for being here today, especially those of you who are sharing your expertise as presenters, facilitators, and organizers. Thank you very much. This would not be possible without all of your enthusiastic participation. As many of you know, in September, the garden will open our new Regenstein Learning Campus, and it will serve as the home base for many of our education programs, including our new nature preschool. The campus also features a garden with opportunities for self-directed nature play. The support of all of you in the early childhood community has been a huge part of making early childhood environmental education become a top priority for the Botanic Garden. And in addition to today's conference, we have several other opportunities that we hope you all can attend, including hosting Claire Warden, Forest Kindergarten and Nature Play Guru. She will be here on July 25th. We also will host an educator open house at the campus on Monday evening, September 12th. Behind the registration desk, there are a lot of information about those programs as well as other upcoming professional development opportunities that we have here. And I know a lot of you had other people from your organization who weren't able to attend today because we did fill up. I also wanted to let everyone know that on the first Saturday in June, there is Early Childhood Nature Education Symposium at Morton Arboretum, which is sponsored by NINPA, the Northern Illinois Nature Preschool Association. So there's lots of other great things and ways for us in this community to network and expand our expertise and contacts. So I really encourage all of you to check out those opportunities. Today, most of our concurrent sessions take place in this building. We do have 2 sessions that are in the Lakeside Room in the Visitor Center. Couple other logistics to know about. Restrooms are behind me. Women's restrooms are on this side of the building. Men's are on that side of the building. And if you need assistance with finding anything, if you want to find somebody who has one of these white name tags, they'll be able to help you, or a green and black Chicago Botanic Garden name tag, and will help you find what you are looking for. I want to let you know that in your agenda, I apologize, there is a typo. The 11:35 session, Nature, Noises, and Music, is not in the Linnaeus room. It is in the Visitor Center in the Lakeside room. So just please be aware of that. If you're heading to Nature, Noises, and Music at 11:35, it is in the Lakeside room. I know a lot of you, as you checked in, got the information about lunch, but I want to remind you all that during lunch, we're asking everyone to split into 2 groups. Last names, beginning with A through J, will eat in Bernstein Hall, which is right behind me, from 12:30 to 1 o'clock, and then go out all the way through the building to McGinley Pavilion for the Nature at Play activities from 1 until 1:30. If your last name is K through Z, your schedule is reversed. You're going to the activities from 12:30 to 1, and then lunch from 1 to 1:30. I also want to let people know, if you did not receive an email directly from me regarding professional development credit, it's likely that someone else at your school or organization registered you as a group, and that means I don't have your direct contact information. So at the end of the day, across the hall in the Pullman room, we'll be collecting contact information so that you can receive our resource booklet when we wrap up the conference, and that will have more details about some of the sessions you'll be participating in today, as well as some photographs and a contact list. One last quick thing. At the back of your packet, there are 3 evaluations. One is a general evaluation, one is for ISBE credit, and one is for Gateways credit. We will be collecting all of those at the end of the day across the hall in Pullman room. You must fill out the ISBE or Gateways evaluation in order to receive credit. We will have a laptop available if you need to look up your Illinois educator identification number, as well as general letters of attendance should you need one for your employer. Rebecca Amon, who is our manager of teacher and student programs, will be there to help facilitate that whole process. So that's it for sort of the overall logistics of the day. And I also wanted to thank, in addition to the support of all of you, this event would not be possible without Liza Sullivan, who is the executive director of the Alliance for Early Childhood. This conference began 3 years ago with her initiative and creativity, and it's really been a true pleasure working and collaborating with her for the past few years. So thank you so much, and thank you for inspiring all of us.
Thank you so much. It's so exciting to see all of you gathered here for our third annual Inspiring Nature Play Conference. I know the Alliance for Early Childhood may be new to some of you, so I just wanted to take a moment to introduce ourselves to you. The Alliance is a community collaboration organization that does work primarily here in the North Shore of Chicago, and our mission is to promote the healthy growth and development of young children from birth to age 8. So in our efforts to preserve childhood, our organization is deeply concerned about children's growing disconnect from nature, and we consider this a very serious childhood issue. And we're so grateful that all of you are taking times out of your busy schedule to be here today to learn more about inspiring nature play for the families that you work with. So it's just really wonderful. We, as Eileen mentioned, we are just under 200 early childhood professionals representing many different disciplines and communities across the Chicagoland area. So welcome to all of you. And it's so wonderful that this year's conference is taking place during the National Screen Free Week, and hopefully will inspire all of us to provide more opportunities for children to rediscover the joys of childhood beyond screens. So together we are a wonderful, powerful change agent providing more opportunities for children and their families to play, grow, and learn in nature. I want to take a moment and recognize Eileen, who has been an amazing leader and incredible partner in coordinating today's events. I'm just so grateful for her tireless efforts and very hard work in making sure that everything today is coordinating seamlessly and just truly inspiring and engaging for all of us. So thank you for all your work. I also want to acknowledge our incredible planning committee, because we have been meeting for over the past 8 months, working really hard and planning today's event. So I just want to recognize those individuals. So thank you to Heather Byrne of Northfield Community Nursery School, Lynn Carey of Backyard Nature Center, Sue Dombro from the Forest Preserves of Cook County, Megan Florkowski from Greeley Elementary School, Katerina Jaksic, also from Greeley Elementary School, Carly Tuminello from the Jurikasuki Nature Museum, Pat Noble from the Cole Children's Museum, and Karen Lewis from the Lake Forest Open Lands. Please join me in giving them a round of applause for all their work. It is now my pleasure to introduce to you today's distinguished keynote speaker, Katie Slivovsky, who is a longtime passionate leader in the nature education movement. Since Katie is from Chicago, and we're so glad to have somebody local, many of you may know her and of her illustrious career, but I want to share some highlights with you. Katie attended the Iowa State University, receiving a degree in fish and wildlife biology with an emphasis in environmental education. Currently, she is the exhibit development director at Chicago Children's Museum. Prior to this work, Katie was a naturalist and exhibit developer at 4 local nature centers, a zoo, an arboretum, and other children's museums, which give her a very deep understanding of the environments that we work in, the communities that we serve, and the challenges that we face. Katie has written on the subject of ecophobia, good environmental manners, and redefining conservation messages for Newsweek, Chicago Parent, the International Zoo Educators Association, among other publications. Her work and her impact has even reached as far as China, where she recently coached zoo educators for the Academy of Conservation Training. In addition to nature education, Katie is a very important voice about other early childhood issues, including creating more inclusive environments for LGBT families in early childhood settings, and helipad parenting, which she defines as empowering children to take charge of their daily lives and providing a safe place to land in times of trouble. I'm so honored that Katie is with us today to share her energy, her passion, and her wisdom. So please join me in welcoming Katie Slivovsky.
Good morning, everyone. How's the sound? Can you hear me okay? All right, it is such a pleasure to be with you. I see so many familiar faces. I think I've worked with about 20% of the people in this audience. So thank you so much for having me, and thank you to the Alliance for Early Childhood. So before we get started, I'd like to ask you all to just think of a nature memory from when you were about 6 years old. So just take a second to write down a few words or doodle a quick sketch. And we're going to come back to that later. Okay, so a little bit more about who you're listening to this morning, and I have a feeling this story is going to resonate with many of you. So this is me when I was about 6 or 7 years old. Grew up in a small town in Iowa. Once a year, my family would go and wade in this creek. We would look under rocks and we would find crawdads. And to me, that was like finding buried treasure. I then volunteered and worked at various nature centers, as Liza mentioned. Studied wildlife biology at Iowa State, which means I got to put on waders like this and seine fish as part of my curriculum. And then landed at Brookfield Zoo for 14 years. Anybody from Brookfield Zoo here? Yay, I see some hands. And the Children's Garden at the Morton Arboretum. I see some people there. That was a pure delight. Worked there a couple of years and am now at the Chicago Children's Museum. But I really do have a confession I want to share with you. I used to instill ecophobic feelings in young children. All right, so what is ecophobia? Author David Sobel defines it this way. It is the fear of nature that young children can develop when their primary contact with the natural world is hearing bad news about the environment. So let's dig into that a little bit. What kind of bad news are we really talking about here? All right, the Extinct Alphabet book. Picked this up in the Brookfield Zoo gift shop one day. Every letter of the alphabet features a different animal that is extinct. L is for the Las Vegas frog, and it talks about how sadly we paved over all the freshwater springs where the Las Vegas frog lived. And the very last line on the last page of this book is this. Let's hope human beings never become extinct. Interesting bedtime reading. Lest you think that's the only extinct alphabet book out there, there's another one I came across, Gone Forever, an alphabet of extinct animals. My goodness. All right, how about this? We have Amazon Frosted Flakes. Let's look at the message on the back of this cereal box. Rainforests are as fragile as dreams. Right now, time is running out for our planet's rainforests, and the Amazon is being slashed and burned. If we do nothing about it, we'll face the extinction of more species than any other time since the dinosaurs disappeared. But there's still hope. You can help save the Amazon rainforest for Enviro kids in the future. By putting Amazon flakes on your breakfast table, you've taken a big step towards preserving our planet's priceless genetic resources. Okay, interesting messaging. How about what's on the back of animal cracker boxes these days? Some fun facts about animals, including this. Gorillas are threatened with extinction by habitat destruction and illegal hunting. All right, one more sad story for you. A book called Zebra Talk, Child's Play. I'm actually going to share every word that is in this book with you. It's only about 6 sentences. So it starts like this. There is a foal asking its mother, "What was it like when you were young like me?" And the mother responds, "Thousands of zebras roamed Africa's savannas and grazed the grasslands like you and me." And then the foal says, "What happened?" Ready? Men with guns. They're actually bullet holes in the page, just big enough for a little finger to poke through. And the foal says, what will happen now? Will I be old like you? Will I see thousands too? The end. Okay, so question for you. How do you feel right now? Just give me a couple words. Shout them out. Sad, depressed, scared, discouraged, disturbed. Okay, all right. I agree with you. How do children tend to react when they're having those feelings? What are some ways that children react when they're overwhelmed, discouraged, scared? Shout it out. Shut down. Cry. What else? Fight. Okay. Fight. Interesting. Stay away. Are any of those things that you just said usually written in our goals for the result of a nature education program? Gosh, we hope you feel shut down, scared, and violent after our program. Holy. All right. So I am here today, guys. We're going to dig into this. We are going to look at this. Overwhelming kids with doom and gloom is inappropriate. We're going to look at it from two different points of view. One, from the cognitive point of view, information processing, it doesn't work. And really more importantly, from an emotional point of view, I'm going to argue that it does more harm than good. All right, so first let's look at this from a cognitive point of view, and it is story time. I'm going to tell you a little story. So there was an 8-year-old girl that learned all about elephant poaching in school in 2nd grade. She was so motivated to take action that she went home and created a poster, which she then hung in her local grocery store. So this is great, right? This is conservation action. She's motivated to actually change her behavior after something she learned in school. However, I want to share with you the title or the slogan on the poster that she created. So from a cognitive point of view, do you think she was connecting all the dots in the right way? Okay. Elephant poaching is an extremely complicated issue. We couldn't get the people in this room to agree on what should be done about it, let alone 2nd graders who aren't even really understanding what ivory is. Okay, I need 8 brave volunteers. You can do it. 8 people. Come on, right up front. 8 brave volunteers. Come on up. First 8 people. 1, 2, 3. Oh, you know what? I'm going to black out the screen for you so we don't have that light in your face. Do we have 8? Hi. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right. So this is the thing. This is what's happening is we're going to jump out of the world of nature education and into the world of math education, okay? So we're going to take a leap. By the way, I see several people sitting in the back. There are many seats up front, so please feel free. This is a good time to move forward if you don't want to stand the whole time. All right, so math education, right? And you have a child's attention from age 5 to 15, and your ultimate goal is to teach them calculus, all right? So I'm going to ask you, here's the lucky part. You guys don't have to do anything. They have to do all the work.
That's my school.
Yes. All right, so as a group, you guys are going to just look and see what's on your card, and I want you guys to put these people in order. Again, you have somebody's attention from age 5 to 15. Your ultimate goal is to teach them calculus. Where are you going to start? Okay, so learning numbers, that's you. You go stand at the end. What's next? Okay. What's next? Okay. Okay. Actually kind of in a little reverse order there, wasn't it? Okay, so what's the message here? What's the point of this? Okay, there's a sequence. It's going to build. We need that foundation. We need to start with a foundation. What else? Scaffolding. Excellent. What else?
Everyone agree on order.
Okay, it kind of makes some common sense when you think about it this way. That's why, okay, who would call themselves a passionate conservationist right here in this room? When you get a bunch of passionate conservationists like us, we can get this feeling that conservation can't wait. And sometimes we want to jump right to the tough stuff, even with the little kids. But I think when you jump out of that world and get something less emotional, it becomes more obvious, this idea of building that foundation and layering it. Now, make no mistake, you're going to get up here. You're going to get to this tough stuff. But what happens when you do too much too soon or start with the tough stuff too early? What can happen? Sorry? Kids hate it. Okay, kids hate it. What else? Failure, frustration. Again, not the kinds of things we're hoping to achieve from our program. Thank you so much, volunteers. Great job. Very brave. Okay, so again, what happens if you do too much too soon? Now, when we're still kind of in this realm of cognitive processing, so I want to share a few other examples with you. How many of you have a 5-day zoo camp or nature camp or a program, maybe even a summer-long program? Many of us have these sort of extended things. And I can tell you, years ago, when I was in charge of these kinds of things, you know, day 1, day 2 would be mammals and fish and wetlands and whatever. But by day 5, we'd sort of get into the habitat loss or the endangered animals. But again, if you think back to that math example, the child is still 7 years old on day 5 of the camp, right? Probably not ready for that upper level stuff. Another example, when we think about sex education, would you say the same thing to a 5-year-old, a 10-year-old, and a 15-year-old? I hope not. And how about movies? You think about movie ratings and what's appropriate for different ages. We have G, we have PG, PG-13, R. I would like to suggest that the topic of elephant poaching is at least PG-13 information. It is complicated, it is sad, it is depressing. We're talking about removing the matriarch and leaving little elephants orphaned. That's seriously sad stuff. I want to share some letters in the words of 2nd graders that were written to the Brookfield Zoo director. Now, these are the solutions that these 2nd graders had come up with after learning about habitat loss. So here's Scott. He's saying you can put signs up telling people not to kill elephants. Here's Jake. I know what you can do. Make more food for the animals. And Alexis with a smile or a little frowny face. Please don't let people build their houses in front on an animal's habitat, because you could be building a hunter's house and they could kill the animals living there. So just trying to kind of show you the thinking of these children. Sometimes we don't always get to hear how the kids have processed what we've told them a little bit later. So I think these are powerful. All right, next we're going to look at this from an emotional point of view, and really the more important point to consider, I believe. There's not a ton of research out there, guys, but there was a study done in West Germany in the 80s, and the goal was to create these empowered global citizens. The strategy was to inform elementary students of environmental problems and how they can participate in finding solutions. Now, there were follow-up studies done years later, and this is the result. Officials found that students felt hopeless and disempowered. The problems were seemingly so widespread and beyond the students' control that their tendency was to turn away from, rather than face up to, participating in local attempts at problem solving. What's the #1 stressor in life? I'm sure you're all thinking of different things. Marriage, children, whatever. But this is it. Feeling responsible for things you can't control. So when we talk to young children about these problems that they really have no ability to have any control over, that creates stress, and that's that emotional disconnect. A 9-year-old, after attending camp for a week, said, "Dad, Zoo camp makes me feel kind of panicky. Again, just not really the emotion we're going for. More letters from second graders. Here's Alex. How can I help? I really, really, really want to help. What can I do? Please send to me quick so I can help quick. I am very, very, very concerned. And then Max is saying, we are real sad that all the animals are dying. It's a little heartbreaking, right? But again, I just want to kind of connect those dots and have you have a chance to kind of absorb how kids are processing some of the stuff that we don't think twice about saying. And I definitely include myself in that. I've made these mistakes in the past. This is my mea culpa. Okay, now I was interested in what teenagers thought of this, because I have this point of view about children and what's appropriate for them, but I really wondered what a bunch of 16-year-olds would think. Did they think, oh, you know, Katie, you're glossing things over, it's fine, they can handle it. So I did a workshop for teenagers, and this is some feedback they gave me after that workshop. Here's Marcus. Kindergartners and first and second graders still believe in Santa. The world is good to you. Hearing bad news about anything can make you stumble. And here's Stephanie. Giving children bad news about the environment at an early age robs them of their childhood by giving them adult problems. This causes kids to grow up too fast. They should be enjoying their childhood instead of worrying about issues that belong in the White House. Isn't that so profound? I was so impressed. And I'm like, here, Stephanie, write that down. Write that exact thing down for me because I want to share that. I thought, boy, these teenagers get it. They understood. So here, another resource, right? Save the Earth, an action handbook for kids. We have happy little children standing on the earth holding hands. When I picked up this book to see if I wanted to use it in my workshops, I flipped through the pages. I came to this list of amazing facts. This is the one and only fact I read. Every day, 40,000 of the world's poorest children under age 5 die unnecessarily for lack of basic health care and medicine. I know, it's so sad. I'm super sorry to kind of lay this on you right now, but you know, this is what's out there for kids. All right, more math for you. Think back to the year, again, when you were about 6. And just think for a minute to yourself, what were the global issues? Whether you knew about them at the time or not. What was going on the year you were 6, give or take? You got something in your head? Okay. For me, it was the Vietnam War. But I can tell you, there were no messages on my cereal boxes telling me to stop the Vietnam War. Was not happening, right? I may have known about the Vietnam War if I'd had a relative fighting in it, and that would have been the reality of my life. I actually didn't know anyone fighting in it. I learned about the Vietnam War in college. Here's another one. Who thought about polio? That was a huge thing for a generation. And you probably knew how to take care of yourself, right? Your parents were cautioning you, don't do this, wash your hands, and so on. But was anyone asking you to find a cure? That's the difference in our messaging today. How about this one? Did anyone think of the Challenger exploding? And again, was anyone asking you to fix NASA? Now, I've referenced the age 6 a few times so far, so I want to tell you why. When I was doing the workshop with teenagers, I asked them to think and to sort of guess at how old they thought they were when they first learned of rainforest destruction. Not rainforests, rainforest destruction, and they said 6. Did anyone's nature play memory from age 6 involve bad news about the environment? So this is my fear. We're sending these messages, save the earth, and we're literally putting the weight of the world on the backs of these little kids. And here's the double whammy, right? Bad news about the environment is at an all-time high, And nature play is at an all-time low, as we know, which is the purpose of our conference today. So back to my confession. I read the Lorax to kindergartners, and we made little puppets and acted out the story. The Lorax is an amazing book about conservation and need versus want, and I would argue that it's ideal for middle schoolers, high schoolers, adults. Looking back, I don't think it was appropriate for the ages that I was sharing it with. Why didn't I realize that what brought me to my career as a nature educator was all that free time looking for crayfish in the creek? Somebody had to connect those dots for me, but I'm really glad they did. You know, if you're interested, we will come back to this question during Q&A. Why do well-intentioned professional educators like me forget what they know about child development when it comes to the environment? It's an interesting thing to consider. All right, done with the sad stuff, guys. When you know better, you do better. So let's do better. This is Katie Slivovsky's 4-step plan to avoiding ecophobia. Ready? And this is really kind of a nice little frame for the whole rest of today. There's so many awesome sessions coming up that are going to get into what I'm going to share at much greater detail. So this is kind of a little overview introduction. So back off the bad news, right? Another quote from David Sobel, no tragedies before 4th grade. Sounds so simple. I add the word extra because actually 4th graders sometimes have tragedy in their life already. They might have an aging grandparent. They could be going through a time of divorce. They could be completely freaked out about learning how to write cursive. You know, whatever it may be, children have complex lives. They might live in a violent neighborhood. There could be domestic abuse. There is already tragedy for children, right? So let's not layer on something else like rainforest destruction that they can't do anything about. All right, look at these pictures. Who's like super interested in these pictures? Raise your hand if you're super interested. And your other option is to be kind of grossed out. Anybody kind of grossed out? All right, so we're getting some of them. Now this, I would argue that whether or not you dissect owl pellets or look at roadkill or are fascinated by predation, that those kind of are more about personal taste rather than age. You know, to me, that's nature. I was totally the kid that was examining the roadkill, right? Poking it, is it stiff yet? I was 5 or 6 years old. So if you're kind of thinking to yourself, well, wait a minute, what am I supposed to talk about? What am I not supposed to talk about? My rule of thumb is this. Don't mess with a child's sense of hope for the future. So if a child wants to dissect an owl pellet, great, right? That's not going to mess with their sense of hope for the future. But talking about no more polar bears in the world ever again, that's a big deal. And that's really never okay to take away someone else's sense of hope for the future. Okay, so here's a suggestion. What you might want to do is inventory the materials that you have in your classrooms, your nature centers right now. And I use this example on the left because I was doing one of those nature tables at lunchtime last year, and I had a preschool teacher come up and say, oh my God, I have that book in my classroom right now, The Polar Animals Endangered. So and that was on my don'ts list, right? So she totally went back and got rid of that book. There are plenty of other books you can replace that with. However, I'll bet you've noticed this. Even a book like this that doesn't seem to be about endangerment or habitat loss, often the very last couple of pages will kind of dig in and go there. I have been known to take an X-Acto knife and remove the last pages of books that I think are not developmentally appropriate for kids. Do it. The thing is, once the cat's out of the bag, once they've heard about this polar bear problem or the elephant poaching, it's hard to get it back in there, right? It's out there. It's tough. You can't unlearn it. It's like you can't unring the bell. So it's our duty to kind of protect kids from this. Now, some children that you're going to be working with or that are in your lives have already heard some of this bad news, right? And they might come to you and say, oh my gosh, blah, 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 this is going on, what do I do? So I worked with an early childhood educator to come up with a response. And I'm going to share that with you and see what you think. I heard about such and such too, and it makes me sad, but I know there are a lot of grown-ups working to help, and maybe when you grow up, you can too. I've actually said those exact words a few times to kids over the years, and it seems to be helpful. Again, this could be something we come back to in Q&A. Okay, so step 1 was back off the bad news. Step 2 is valuing nature play, and I know you already have so many great experiences with this already, but I'll share with you some of my favorites. At my current workplace, we think a lot about childhood, and we think about how childhood has changed, right? So kids, I see some chuckling. We have our little kid wrapped in bubble wrap. We have our kid that's, this little guy on a screen, and then we have our kids, all this paper and pencil over testing kind of stuff going on. So childhood may have changed, but fundamentally, children don't. We like to think about this. What do children across time, gender, and culture need, want, and love to do? And it's nature play. That's one of the many universal pursuits of childhood. These pictures could be 10 years old, 100 years old. Okay, so nature play invites investigation, right? Nature play stimulates the senses. Who can imagine what it feels like to be in that pile of leaves? Because you've done it before, right? Nature play provides challenges which build confidence. Great way to build a self-esteem. Get across that little log bridge without falling. I did it, right? It's a legitimate sense of accomplishment that comes from within, not from someone else praising you. Nature play invites risk-taking and everyday injuries. Now this child might fall. What would be the worst thing that could happen if this child were to fall? Maybe a broken arm. I agree. That's probably hopefully the worst thing that would happen. That might be a little bit more than an everyday injury, but you know what? A cast, it heals, you move on. Who broke a bone as a child? I fell in a hole and broke my leg. Okay, again, and what's the cost of not having that opportunity? So everyday injuries, we're okay with. Catastrophic injuries, we're not okay with. All right, so at the Children's Museum, we love this idea of danger and thrill so much that we actually created an experience we called Human Wrecking Ball. Now, we did this in our Great Hall. I much prefer the idea of doing it outside, and I'm not even suggesting it's better to do it at the Children's Museum, but we don't have an outdoor area, so this is what we did. And you literally could leap off this 5-foot platform and go smashing into a mountain of beanbags. And it was scary. It was thrilling. And this was the text we had for caregivers. Danger done right. Children build confidence when they size up a challenge, try something new, face their fears. What's really dangerous? When children don't test their limits and learn to trust their own decisions. So all this safety has a cost. Nature play requires focus, problem solving, coordination, right? It takes a lot of planning to scoop something out of a moving body of water. Of course, we can compare these two. As colorful and attractive at first glance as that playground is, the equipment on that playground responds the same way every time it's used, right? This, much more unpredictable. Different, it could be slippery, there could be bugs under the bark, it's going to be moving, it's going to change throughout the year. Another example, no real comparison here, right, about which is more challenging. So that unpredictability of nature is part of why a lot of us, I know, enjoyed playing in it as a child. Here's another thing. Nature play puts kids in charge. We all know this sort of overscheduled and soccer and all of that stuff. is part of children's lives right now. But when kids are playing in nature, they're making up their own rules if they're unsupervised, which I recommend, some unsupervised time in nature. Here, this little guy has put up a sign that says no girls. Maybe that went over well, maybe that didn't. Maybe he had to sort of negotiate with the girls in the neighborhood or the boys or kind of figure things out, right? Hopefully an adult isn't there to do all of that negotiation. They're in charge of their space and they're figuring out what's going on. Okay, nature play promotes innovation. It's hard to get a roof on a fort. It takes a lot of work and effort to prop that up. And here's a little kid over here trying to get water out of that creek. He's got rope, he's got a couple of buckets. Does he need a pulley system? What's going on? So lots of innovation happening here. Now, early childhood is a focus today, and I know you've heard that term, loose parts. Such a simple but powerful term. Yeah, ladies, come on up. There's some seats right in front. Help yourself. So what's so great about loose parts? Well, Simon Nicholson, an architect, describes it this way. In any environment, both the degree of inventiveness and creativity and the possibility of discovery are directly proportional to the number and kind of variables in it. Now, do you see these hands are holding a bunch of wood chips? Can you practically smell those? So even the wood chips that are underneath all that plastic playground equipment, there's actually more play value in the wood chips than there is in the playground equipment. Nature play is real, right? You don't have that screen separating you. Nature play is joyful. Offers exploration and discovery. Nobody knows what those kids are going to get in those butterfly nets after they sweep them around that field. Nature play is calming and healing. Now, this could be a whole other workshop. There's so much really fascinating research that's being done on the value of nature play for prison inmates, for people recovering in hospitals, for kids with all kinds of different abilities and disabilities. So, in fact, there is an article that I wrote that sort of accompanies what's happening today, and it does dig into this a little bit more deeply and offers some links to that research. So there's more there, and I'm sure you all have a sense of that. My best friend had a very challenging childhood, and she says she doesn't think she could have gotten through it if she didn't have that little patch of woods where she could retreat and be on her own once in a while. Okay, so I've referenced David Sobel a couple of times. I was able to work with him when developing the Play Zoo at Brookfield Zoo. Another expert I got to work with was Dr. Louise Chawla, and she is now at the University of Colorado in Boulder. And what she did is she interviewed a bunch of adults like us, people that consider themselves to be good environmental stewards. They didn't necessarily make a career out of it, but people as adults that are good environmental stewards. And she found two things common in their childhoods. So these are the common denominators in the childhoods of people that grew to be good environmental stewards. It's about the only recipe we have, right, to draw on. So the first thing was free time spent in wild or semi-wild places. So again, it doesn't have to be the wilderness. It can be the ditch, the puddle. I mean, maybe it's a balcony garden, whatever. Free time in these areas. And the second important thing, I think a little light will turn on when you see it, an adult role model. Anybody thinking of a special person in their life? For me, it was my dad. It might have been a teacher, a scout leader, a parent, an aunt, an uncle, grandparent, whatever. An adult role model who gave nature, and this is my favorite, appreciative attention. Just appreciative attention, not tons and tons of facts or expertise, just appreciative attention. So Rachel Carson, who I can't think of a more impassioned conservationist, she wrote Silent Spring for adults, and what did she write for families? The sense of wonder. And look at her. It is not half so important to know as to feel when introducing a young child to the natural world. Okay, Now, back to the expertise thing. You see these 5 birds on the left? How many of you can identify them? Like probably all 5. All right, I can totally do that now, but guess what? I was probably a junior in college before I could identify those 5 birds, seriously. You know, but too often our nature education for kindergartners would start with identifying these 5 birds. You know, instead I'm sitting there on the ground of this meadow watching birds carrying nesting materials, listening to them. I didn't know what their names were. It didn't matter. It's not hard to learn the names. That's not the hard part. The hard part is spending time absorbing, learning, watching, falling in love. All right, step 3 on our journey to avoid ecophobia. What we're going to talk about next is practicing good environmental manners. You think about good manners you learn to respect another human being, please and thank you. We're going to talk about good environmentals to just respect the environment, but we're not going to make it any more frightening than learning, please and thank you. So a couple examples. Young kids can recycle, they can sort recyclables. Really nice environmental action kids can take. Make a birdhouse, fantastic. What we're gonna do is leave out the dire consequences of what would happen if no one recycled. All right, we don't need to go there with our 8-year-olds. I'm gonna show you one of my all-time favorite pictures. Bum, ba-da-da. This, I'm glad you like this. This is my daughter, Leah. At age 9 on Earth Day. And she got it in her head that she was going to pick up litter. And look at the empowerment and the pride and the sense of accomplishment on that little face. I did not ask her to pose like that. She just did it, you know? This, to me, that's what we want, right? Empowered, strong, hopeful children. Doing these sort of environmental good manners, we're learning these things out of habit, not fear. Now here's a tricky thing, but I just ask you to really consider this. When you're talking to children about what they should and shouldn't do, please don't suggest actions that they have absolutely no ability to control. Remember back to that #1 stressor in life. Kids really cannot control pollution. They can't control habitat loss. I'm talking, 8 and under, early childhood, right? So when we think about something like water conservation, children can learn to turn off the faucet when they're brushing their teeth. That is an appropriate action for children of any age. Children cannot hire plumbers to fix leaky faucets. I have seen messaging in public institutions that are directed at children telling them to tell their parents to fix their leaky faucets. And they say how much water is being wasted. Anybody seen a message like that? This is the problem, and I'll share a personal story. In 2008, I had a leaky faucet. What else happened in 2008 to the American economy? Recession, right? My husband was a real estate appraiser, lost his job, right? Fixing the leaky faucet was not on my priority list. So to have my children concerned about all the water that was being wasted during that time, again, it's making them feel responsible for something that is really not their decision. And here I am, a conservationist. I was going to get around to fixing that faucet one of these days, but it was going to be my schedule, not my child's schedule. So I really do caution you about using kids to get to adults. And in some cultures, that's really not appropriate. I mean, I would suggest in any culture it's not so appropriate, but some cultures it's really kind of a negative, to have this child be telling the adult what they think should be done. Well, it's just an interesting point to consider. Okay, so children's experience with nature changes over time. We're just going to dig into this a little bit. There are many ways to divide kids up by age. This is one way to do it. I'm not even saying it's the best way to do it. But when we think about, the youngest kids, birth through age 3, we're focusing on sensory. 4 to 7, we're adding in things like empathy. And by empathy, I mean, I need food, the bird needs food. I need a home, the raccoon needs a home. That kind of empathy. Now by ages 8 to 11, that's that free exploration. Who built a fort as a kid? Who can remember building forts? I'm guessing if you think about how old you were between ages 8 and 11. When we get to 12 and up, that's when we're adding in the social justice issues. So here, the young kids, and again, I delved deeper into this article that accompanies this program. So these are just a few broad examples. Sensory experiences, age-appropriate conservation action, turn the light off when you leave a room. Age 4 to 7, the activity, make a bird feeder, take the recyclables to the curb, right? These are the age-appropriate things. Exploration, and if you can stand it, unsupervised exploration, or maybe you can be within earshot. I like to say, take a lawn chair to the forest preserve, bring a book and a soda and sit there and chill out, right? Have the kids explore. I don't know, some of you guys work in forest preserves. I don't know if that's allowed, but I do it. And an activity here might be maintaining a bird feeder or a bird bath, something that's a little bit more complex. And then by the time we're getting up to age 12, of course, playing with fire, fantastic, so exciting, everybody loves to do that. And as far as an action, try asking those middle school kids, what's a problem you would like to help solve? They might surprise you. Maybe they are super worried about the ice melting in the Arctic, and that's what they want to dig into, and you can support that. Or maybe it's something much more local, some little thing that might be going on. Listen to them. Let them guide you rather than you tell them what they should do. When you think about who can influence policy, teenagers believe in themselves, they're little zealots, get them going, they're excited, right? We don't want them to tune out before they get to that age of zealousness. They believe in themselves. These guys believe in the tooth fairy. And I don't mean to say that in any sort of negative way. I mean, we need to remember that that's where children's heads are. So again, it's just inappropriate to lay this other stuff on them. A couple of weeks ago, I went to a conference, or a lecture, also supported by the Alliance for Early Childhood, by Erica Christakis. And this is an amazing book, I recommend it. And she really was pointing out that it's impossible for adults to remember childhood. So we have to work at it. I'm going to give you a couple of stories. So we see this family on a golf cart and this home for sale. So 2 stories. My husband was trying to get our 5-year-old nephew to go golfing with him. So he's promising, it'll be so much fun, you get to ride around in a cart all day. And he could not figure out why the nephew wasn't interested, because my husband knew it would be exciting and fun. He said, you can even drive the cart. Another example, we're house hunting. My daughter is 8 years old. Very not interested in house hunting, very gloomy as we're looking at these different homes. And I'm thinking, oh, it's just because she doesn't want to move. Well, here's what was going on in their heads. My nephew thought he'd be in a grocery cart. My daughter thought you just picked up and moved from one house to the other and left all your stuff there. So she's seeing these bedrooms of like grandmas or whatever, or grandpas, thinking, I don't want to live in that bedroom, right? She didn't, but that was her life experience. So it's my nephew's life experience. And sometimes as adults, we kind of forget where kids are and what they're able to handle. And we need to respect their life experiences and be patient. Okay, so the last step here, bringing nature into children's lives. Another quote by Erica. This really resonated with me. Children's play impulse is hardwired, but it needs support, like breastfeeding. I know some of the guys probably don't understand that reference. Okay, so some of my favorite activities. Go to the organic section of your grocery store, find a potato that still has eyes on it, put it in water, watch the roots go down, the shoots grow up, celery in the colored water, simple, fun. You can do this at home, do this in your classroom. Doesn't get much easier than taking care of a betta fish, just saying. Guinea pig, another fairly easy pet to take care of. Anybody familiar with Andy Goldsworthy? I'll bet several people are. Yeah, what an amazing artist. He creates ephemeral art with natural objects. Try that with children. Again, giving them the control rather than giving them some kit. Produce this, make this. Try something like that, a little bit more open-ended. Wildlife, attracting wildlife to your preschool, your home, little toad house, little bird feeder. Now, you know, some kids, let's say you're in an apartment complex, can you put a paver or a stone out front that you can look under every time you're going in and out? So there are ways to incorporate wildlife experiences into urban settings as well. One of my favorite, who's done this activity? I love this activity. I've done this with ages 2 to 80, where you give kids or adults these color strips and just go out in nature, and it completely changes the way that kids experience the outdoors. It's such an easy, friendly, open-ended, kind of warm, fuzzy, highly observational way to experience nature. You know, the people in my neighborhood that don't know how common American toads are the people that never garden, because they're all around us, right? Okay, I'm going to tell you a little story that I think might resonate with some of you. So our house, this new house that we bought, right, it backs up to a park. And in the back of this park, there was a jungle gym that looked like that, okay? There was this big neighborhood effort to redo the park. There were, you know, it was this whole commission that was organized. And here I am, I'd already done the play zoo. I am on a first name basis with these landscape architects that totally know how to make great nature playgrounds. And I believe there are 2 sessions today about this very topic. Is this what my park transformed itself into with my leadership? No. It was 10 years ago, little kids, working full time, I didn't lift a finger. Does anybody resonate with like wanting to do more than you can actually do? So I'm like, that's another little confession. However, more recently, my kids are older, I have time. I had another opportunity. I want to share this with you. I helped to create a very sweet little children's garden on another patch of land in my community. It takes 1 day of planning and 1 day of execution. We paint rocks, those are the loose parts. Kids make bird feeders to take home. They're attracting wildlife to their backyard. And kids in about an hour are putting in 225 marigolds and geraniums. You want to see how big this plot of land is? It's that big. But it is a very, look at the stumps. Whoever's doing those 2 sessions later today, I know enough about what should be in there that even in this tiny space, really I think 4 of them could fit in this room. But it's magical. It's very sweet. It's very welcoming. And it's right by a preschool at a church. There are well over 100 kids that play in this garden. So here's the moral of that story. Just do what you can do. Do what you can, right? All right, I just have a few more slides here. I showed you a picture of my daughter. This is my son at age 2. Now, I mentioned that I developed the Hamill Family Play Zoo. This is a graphic that hangs over the fireplace in the zoo at home. That is my son sitting in the tree. You ready to see a picture of him now? He's a play partner there. It's so special. So, of course, he posed for this for me, and he's sitting right there. Hey, Eric, raise your hand. So I know Sean is doing a session later today called From Camper to Colleague, and I'm fascinated to learn what you learned as you followed the lives of kids that took our camps and then became interested in becoming volunteers and staffers as they aged. So I was really happy to have my son kind of follow that path. All right, quick recap. This is our 4-step plan to avoid ecophobia. Back off the bad news, understand the value of nature play, practice good environmental manners out of habit, not fear, and bring nature into children's lives. And the last slide is my favorite quote of all time. Let us allow children to love the earth before we ask them to save it. Thank you for your attention today.